When I started working on this Tony Robbins documentary, I noticed the same comments coming up over and over again.
I named Tony Robbins is a snake oil salesman and nobody's talking about it.
Some people say he's a scam artist.
Is Tony Robbins a fraud?
But then there were others.
Go watch Tony Robbins or whatever. That's good self-improvement.
And I absolutely adore Tony Robbins.
Why is he so powerful?
He's so great. I know.
So is he the savior that many people desperately need, or the greatest scammer the world has ever seen? One thing's for sure, he can't be both. So let's find out. To really understand Tony Robbins, we can't just look at the Tony Robbins of today. We need to go back and understand where Tony Robbins came from, his past. And to do that, we need to go back to 1977, North Hollywood, California. Tony Robbins is 17 years old. In less than a decade, he will start to captivate the world with his brand of self-help. But right now, this young man is the one who needs help. It's been said if you want to understand what drives the son, you should look at the father first. Growing up, Tony Robbins had 4 different fathers, and they all shared one thing in common. They would all eventually abandon him.
So the father should be an encouraging force, but can be a tyrannical and crushing force.
These failed relationships not only destroyed Tony's confidence, but also kept his family in poverty.
When I was very young, my family was very poor. Grew up in kind of the hood of LA, a really rough territory, and on a commercial street. In this crappy little house, there's a lot of violence around there.
His rough childhood burns a fire inside of him. He sets out on a mission to become everything his fathers weren't.
You know, I had 4 different fathers, and watching them kind of, accept whatever life gave them it's why a lot of my drive came about.
But Tony's turbulent home life extended beyond his father's. His mother too played a significant role. Her life was wrecked by substance abuse that wreaked havoc on his existence.
Mom was beautiful. She was the most influential person in my life. And yet she also, when she drank alcohol and took prescription medication, she got crazy.
Yeah.
So she smashed my head against the wall till I bled, pouring liquid soap down my throat till I threw up because she thought I was lying and I wasn't. It's so crazy when the person you love most is trying to harm you. And one night my mom decided to kick my father out, my 4th father, and she's a powerful lady. And my dad left and I talked back a little bit, I guess, was the perception. I was just defending my dad. And so my mom chased me out of the knife. She chased me out of the house on Christmas Eve with a knife. And I knew she wasn't gonna hurt me or kill me, but I wasn't going back in that house. So I started on my little journey there, trying to figure out what the hell I was gonna do.
Tony is now on his own, not a single soul in the world there to believe in him. He needs to step up and take control of his life. But how?
It seems to me that you have a very, very traumatic childhood and were not nourished in the way that you should be, so you had to turn yourself into your own nutritional source.
Yes.
He begins the lonely but honest work as a janitor just to survive. But he's so determined to succeed, he uses every spare second he has to study.
The reasonable man conforms to the world. The unreasonable man bends the world to his will. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable man.
I was homeless, literally on my own, just getting started. I didn't have the internet, but I decided I had to go to a library and I had to feed my mind. It was a natural outcropping of some frustrations in my own life and wanting to solve them, figure things out. And I looked for solutions and I looked to books because I didn't have any role models per se. And I used to drive down when I had no money and making $40 a week as a janitor, $35 a week as a janitor. And I would save it up and go buy these tape programs. You couldn't go on YouTube and get stuff for free like that. It was like $300 for 6 cassettes and a workbook. And I tell you that because I valued it. I listened to it again and again and again and again until it became part of me.
All the material that Tony's consuming, there is one man that resonates with him the most, Jim Rohn.
But that's the American dream, right? Come true. Chance to start from scratch, start from obscurity, start with pennies, start with nothing, and have a chance to transform your life, change your life, set your goals, and see what you can accomplish. The big question is not what am I getting paid here? The big question is what am I becoming here? Because true happiness is not contained in what you get. Happiness is contained in what you become.
Tony didn't know it yet, but their worlds were about to collide. One day whilst at work, he finds out from his boss that Jim Rohn is going to be in town hosting a seminar.
How much is it? This is 1977. This shows how old I am. I'm a 17-year-old kid. And he said, it's $35. And I'm like, holy shit, because I'm making $40 a week as a janitor. That's a week's pay for one little evening?
Tony Robbins sat in my seminar when he was 17. 17, he was on the outs with his parents and he was sleeping in his car.
And someone got him to come to my seminar, age 17.
So it was a big decision. I listened to him speak, and I came out so inspired because most of what he said I already believed. Now as an authority figure saying you really can be this way.
For things to change for you, you've got to change. Otherwise, it isn't going to change.
Craving change and seeking mentorship, Tony hangs around till after the seminar and asks Rohn for a job. Rohn sees the burning potential in this young man and accepts him on the spot.
Because here's what's important to me, is for my name once in a while to appear in someone's testimonial. Make that note. It's one of life's greatest experiences, is when your name appears in somebody's testimonial. Somebody says, here's the person who found me. Here's the person who got me started. Here's the person who wouldn't let me quit. Gave me more reasons for staying than for leaving. Here's the person who believed in me until I could believe in myself.
And Jim taught me when I was just 17 years old that in life, there's only one way for you to really truly have your labor be fulfilling. You have to align with what's most important to you, what you really believe in, what's meaningful for you.
Jim Rohn has more influence on young Tony than anyone else. Tony takes a lot of his teachings and improves upon them. Teachings like the power of belief, continuous personal development, goal setting, building good habits, and perhaps most interestingly, the art of the seminar. Touring around the country, speaking to people in live audiences, this was all modeled from Jim Rohn. But in years to come, this seminar format would become his most controversial offering. By 1980, Tony believes he's absorbed all the wisdom he needs from Jim Rohn and goes out into the world on his own. Over the following years, he works at a few companies, gaining some financial success, but ultimately, he's not fulfilled.
I think part of it is I felt so darn much pain, I had to change. You know, I was in a place where I hated what I was doing. I hated the environment. I thought to myself, why do I have to do this? Why am I experiencing all this in my life? I don't want to work. I don't want to do any of these things. And something in me started to snap. The next day I got up and I was like, who I am as a man, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, financially. I'm not demonstrating any of that, who I really am. And once I got enough pain, one day I changed the question I was asking myself. And instead of saying, why do I have to do this? Or how come this has happened to me? I asked the question of, what would happen if? What would happen if I turned my whole life around? What would happen if all of a sudden I went and learned some things that could change it all? And what I began to do literally is open up a new possibility. I went and learned a series of tools. I learned Gestalt therapy. I learned Ericksonian hypnosis. I learned neurolinguistic programming. And when I'd be in these classes, I was obsessed because I want to know everything. So when I was done with the class, everybody else would go to dinner, and I would sit in that class for another 2 hours and rewrite everything that I heard that I thought was valuable. Like every distinction, every story, every strategy. And then I'd try to figure out how to organize it in a way where I could use all those strategies. And my life started changing. And when my life changed, everybody asked me what happened, and I started sharing it more. And then gradually it led to me doing events and learning different skills.
Tony rebuilds himself, getting his life back on track from the ground up. And part of this transformation period involves using a controversial method called neurolinguistic programming, or NLP.
To me, it was the most powerful experience I'd ever had. I mean, the stuff we did there was phenomenal.
Neurolinguistic programming was developed in 1975 by Richard Bandler, psychologist, and John Grinder, a linguist. At its core, NLP was based around finding successful people you want to be like and copying the things they do. This is called modeling.
We have among us people we recognize as geniuses who have achieved such superior levels of performance in some discipline or in some particular professional activity that they become avatars or exemplars, or, if our attitude is appropriate, an opportunity for us to upgrade the quality of our own game.
Because my experience has shown that success leaves clues. That is, people who succeed do certain things over and over and over again. And if you find out what people do in their minds and in their bodies that creates for them high peak emotional states and effective behaviors, if you take the same actions mentally and physically, you'll produce the same results. I call that process modeling. And NLP taught me to model people with more precision than ever before.
I think we sort of know that the science of NLP is kind of pseudoscience, but there's a lot of caveats to this, so we got to dive in a little bit. So the first is that we certainly know some of the premises of NLP are that our actions and our words are somehow tied, and that's absolutely true. So if you look at like just basic psychotherapy techniques, like if you pay attention to someone's words, It will give you an idea of what is going on in their mind, even predict certain kinds of behaviors. So there's definitely like, you can use language diagnostically for sure to sort of get a sense of where someone is. So one thing that I've learned about all these stories about complementary and alternative medicine is that there are absolutely success stories that defy scientific understanding in the moment. The challenge, though, is if we're looking at whether something is scientific or not, the question is one of reliability. So now the question becomes, if Tony Robbins takes 1,000 people who have 1,000 different phobias, can he reliably cure them of their phobia? And then the next question becomes, if this is really NLP, then theoretically we should be able to teach it to 1,000 other people who should have the same success rate as Tony Robbins does. And I think when you do that, it doesn't work.
Despite the controversy around NLP, Tony takes the teachings that he believes works, he packages that up with his teachings from Rohn and all the books and studies that he's done over the years, and creates his own brand of self-help. This next period is where the Tony Robbins we know of today is born. He continues to tour around the country with his seminars. He releases his first book, Unlimited Power, and the accompanying audio cassettes, which get sold via infomercials. This proves incredibly lucrative for Robbins.
In the last year, over 50 million people met a remarkable man named Anthony Robbins. Since then, his personal power audio program has helped hundreds of thousands of people master their finances, improve the quality of their relationships, and achieve peak physical performance.
I was 21 years old when I was first starting to do stand-up. I got Unlimited Power, which is one of his books.
Yeah.
And it came like, it had like audio cassettes. He would listen to his audio cassettes. And I was living in Revere, Massachusetts at this shitty apartment. And I was like writing things down and reading his book and like trying to motivate myself.
But if you condition yourself, you can be courageous in places where you used to be fearful. You can feel strong in places you were weak or afraid. You can find yourself following through where you used to procrastinate.
He's got legit points. He's done a good job of curating really good inspirational ideas.
You all say greatness is inside of all, but I don't really think there's any greatness in me. Do you think there's greatness in all of us?
I think greatness is everyone's heritage.
Tony Robbins attracted his audiences through his books and audio cassettes, but his main and most expensive product offering were his seminars like Date with Destiny and Unleash the Power Within. These 12-hour multi-day events that cost thousands of dollars that would become the main source of criticism for Tony Robbins.
You don't need freaking Tony Robbins. You don't need to pay Tony Robbins $3,000 to sit there and listen to him freaking lecture you.
I was watching his seminars and I was thinking to myself, what is with all of this like obnoxious clapping and really loud music?
People are like getting loans and selling their shit. These are poor people that are desperate, to improve their lives.
Then, in 2016, the criticism would explode. The world would get an inside look into these seminars without having to pay. When director Joe Berlinger would release the Netflix film I Am Not Your Guru, which documented the $5,000 6-day Date with Destiny event.
Thanks for having me.
So how did you first encounter Tony Robbins?
I met Tony at a party in 2012. I knew very little about him. I just had a very superficial, idea. This is the infomercial guy who sells his books and DVDs. I had no idea he even did live events. And he invited me to a seminar. And I would have told you back then, I'm not a seminar guy, not a self-help guy. Like a lot of my films, I've looked into the dark side of a lot of bad things like prosecutorial misconduct with the West Memphis 3 or pollution in the Amazon by oil companies and crude. I guess you could say I've made a lot of feel-bad movies. And something about the conversation just drove me to take his invitation to go to the seminar. So I flew out to Palm Springs thinking, not even sure what I was stepping into. The seminar starts, there's lots of music and dancing and pairing off with strangers and to reveal like your innermost feelings. And it just everything about it was sending the wrong message to me. So I fled on the first break out to the exit doors and I called my wife. All of my red flags going off thinking, oh my God, I've got to get the hell out of here. This is not for me. My wife, bless her heart, said, you know what, give it another day. I gave it another day, had an incredibly amazing transformational experience. We did this guided memory process that Tony takes you through.
I'm wondering what your earliest memory is. Where were you? What were you experiencing? What did it mean? What did you decide back then? It's a decision that affected the way you think about life. Okay.
I woke up or opened my eyes in a room of 2,500 people in tears, and so I felt a weight lift, and I felt like, okay, there's something to this. All boundaries melt. There is a spirit of positivity in that room that I have never experienced ever in my life. There's a caring amongst people that you never see, and so I wanted to, how can I capture that on film and give that to an audience? It's the people in the middle like me, and it's the journey, it's the who have no perception or a misperception, who may be suspicious about this type of activity. Those are the people who I want to take on the same journey that I took, which is a journey of, I would almost say, repulsion to not just acceptance, but just having this incredible experience and being given some tools to manage, my sense of self-fulfillment. One of the things I learned from making this film is that he is truly committed to helping people. I mean, he's driven by this mission, this sense that he has a gift that he can share with people.
After its release, I Am Not Your Guru would get destroyed by critics, getting a 45% rating, earning itself a rotten status on Rotten Tomatoes. But Joe Berlinger put his reputation on the line to make this film and try and show people what he experienced during that seminar. The problem with the film, and even Joe Berlinger's experience, is that it's just a story, or a collection of stories and anecdotes, and there was never really any data to back up what was happening in these seminars. That was until 2022.
I got approached by Stanford during COVID because, I adapted. I wanted to try and help people. And
people report anecdotal stories around, like changes in their mood and their depression, in their lives and their quality of life, etc. But when I did a literature search, there were literally 0 studies on your work and what was done.
Data do you have on this? And I said, well, I got zillions and zillions of, testimonials and stories, but no one's ever studied it. So they said, listen, we think this could be incredible.
We did this randomized controlled trial, which is incredible because, that's the best study design. And we had 45 people that were randomized to 2 groups. So half of them went to Date with Destiny for 6 days, and then half of them did gratitude journaling for 1 month. And this study among people that were both depressed and not depressed. And so half of our study population started with depression and half of them started without depression.
They explained to me that right now, if you go across the meta studies on depression, which is out of control since COVID, obviously, it's not COVID as much as it was the shutdowns and the fear. All of this fear has put people in a place where there's no compelling future. And that's one of the things that we all need. We can all deal with the difficult today if we have a compelling tomorrow.
Individuals that started depressed, we actually saw that 100% of those individuals at the 1 month follow-up time point were no longer depressed. They were in remission.
So this study that we did with Stanford, you don't see that. It doesn't happen. So you have an intervention that you pack into 6 days time, not a month worth of psychotherapy and hallucinogenics. 6 days time, no drugs, and 100% remission.
But they would go further. The second study, due to restrictions with COVID lockdowns, focused on a live digital version of the Date with Destiny event.
And what we did was we took wearables and actually had them all around the United States. Yeah. And even like in Puerto Rico. And so we had subjects wearing these sensors, and we had you wearing the same thing they were wearing.
Yeah.
And it was exciting because we saw the same mirroring of physiology that we saw in person virtually. Anxiety went down.
Yeah.
Basically focus on achievement in the future, relationships, all of these amazing things. That loneliness went down. What we saw was astounding. Every variable we measured at baseline was improved. And I'm talking about like 30 to 50% improvements a year, almost a year after this event.
71% reduction in negative emotions, 52 improvement in positive emotions a year after doing this. So the long impact of this is what they're most impressed by.
because there are so many people that I speak to, especially in academia or clinical practice, and they'll hear a name like yours, Tony Robbins, and they'll immediately default to, oh, that's bullshit. There's no way that this could actually help people. It's snake oil. And meanwhile, a belief is a poor substitute for an experience, right? They're not actually going in the building and experiencing this and playing full out and trying it. And the truth is that there is something on the buffet here that could potentially help somebody transform their life and give them their life back.
When you say the name Tony Robbins, you're often met with a healthy dose of skepticism and some sensationalist claims like he's a snake oil salesman or he's just a legit scammer. But I believe the Stanford study and even Joe Berlinger in his film I Am Not Your Guru shine a light on the potential for change that can occur in these events. Tony Robbins provides a variety of tools to assist people, and obviously not all of these methods are going to work for everyone. However, I think that for the people that are dedicated, significant changes can be made if you believe and you put in the effort.
You don't have to accept Tony as your one and only savior. You don't have to believe that he is flawless, because he is not. He's just like everyone else. He's an imperfect creature trying to do the best with the gifts and talents he's developed. But the guy knows his shit, and he actually really cares.
Because I really believe everyone has to find not motivation, because that's temporary. It's like a warm bath. We have to find our drive. And drive is something that never ends. And when you find your passion or your drive, it's like you're not doing it to be successful. You're not doing it to make some money. You love all those additional things that happen, but you're doing it because it's what you love, and it gets you up early and keeps you up late, and you notice things, and you have an impact, and you have a sense of contribution, and life is really joyous.